After the end of the World War II, the world celebrated the defeat of fascism and returned to peace. But peace was short-lived. Almost immediately, a new struggle began, the Cold War. This wasn't a conventional war fought with weapons and armies, but a tense standoff between two superpowers, the United States and Soviet Union. The Cold War was an ideological battle where democracy and capitalism clashed with communism, influencing every corner of the globe. For nearly half a century, the Cold War defined international relations, creating sharp divides and proxy wars around the world. But in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed and the Cold War ended. The world found itself in a new crossroads, prompting thinkers to ask, what would the post-Cold War world look like? Well, two influential visions emerged to answer this question. Why, by Francis Fukuyama, proclaimed the end of the history, suggesting that a liberal democracy was the endpoint of humanity ideological evolution. The other, from Samuel Huntington, envisioned the clash of civilization, where cultural and religious divides would shape future conflicts in a multipolar world. The End of History by Francis Fukuyama. Fukuyama's End of the History argues that humanity had reached its ideological climax. He proposed that liberal democracy with a focus on freedom, human rights, and market-based economics was an ultimate governing model. According to him, while conflicts might continue, the ideological struggle was over. For Fukuyama, the end of the history didn't mean the end of the events or progress, but suggested that the end of the significant ideological evolution. In the 1990s, with democracy spreading globally, seemed to support his view. Clash of Civilization by Samuel Huntington. In contrast, Huntington's Clash of Civilization proposed that the end of the Cold War marked a shift from ideological and national conflicts to those based on cultural and civilizational identities. Huntington's divide the world into two different cultural blocks, or civilizations: Western, Islamic, Hindu, Zinnic, and more, each with its own values and historical references. Huntington's theory suggested that these civilizations would not easily coexist, as each would protect its own cultural identity, potentially leading to friction and conflicts. For Huntington, the future would be marked by tension not over ideologies, but identities. And there are some real-life examples, such as Israel and Palestine. Fukuyama's world was, in theory, a place of unity under shared liberal values, while Huntington was divided, with civilization often misunderstanding or mistrusting each other. Both thinkers acknowledged the spread of technology and trade, but they interpret its effects differently. Fukuyama sees globalization as a unifying, spreading democratic ideals and capitalism worldwide. Huntington, however, argues that the globalization intensifies cultural boundaries, with civilization reinforcing their identities in reaction to a Western influence. In Fukuyama's view, liberal democracies would largely avoid conflicts with one another, as democracies tend to resolve dispute peacefully. Huntington, however, predicted that the conflicts would rise, especially where different civilizations meet or fault lines, particularly between the West and Islamic civilizations. Fukuyama has faced criticism for underestimating the resilience of authoritarianism as seen in China and Russia, and the rise of populist movement even with democracies. Many argue that his theory was overly optimistic about liberal democracy dominance. Well, Huntington's theory has been critiqued for being overly deterministic, potentially stereotyping civilizations and neglecting the internal diversity within each civilization. Critics argue that its risk oversimplifying global politics by reducing it to a clash of identities. Today's world reflects a complex mixture of both theories. The resurgence of nationalism, religious conflicts, and regional power struggles echoes Huntington's Clash of Civilization, yet Fukuyama's ideas endure in place where liberal values still spread, with democracy, human rights, and free markets influencing global governance. The rise of China as an authoritarian power and persistence of democracies reflect that the end of the history was not quite here, but perhaps the clash isn't absolute either. Both Fukuyama and Huntington provide frameworks that help us interpret the world's political landscape, but neither fully captures its complexity. As we face issues like climate change, technological disruption, and ideological conflicts, perhaps we need new ideas that integrate both the unity Fukuyama hoped for and caution Huntington advised. Thank you for your attention.